I'm Victoria Lane, 32, and I never thought I'd be the one orchestrating the downfall of my own family. It started at my parents' anniversary dinner when my younger sister Jessica proudly announced she was pregnant with my husband's child. Their smug faces changed when I stood up, raised my glass, and revealed I had known about their affair for months. What they didn't know is that I had already set in motion a plan that would change all our lives forever. Before I dive into this wild family revenge drama, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy stories about family betrayal and sweet, sweet justice. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how this all unfolds. Karma doesn't just knock on the door. Sometimes it brings the whole house down. 6 months before that fateful dinner, my life seemed picture perfect. I had been married to Michael for 5 years. We had just bought our dream home in a quiet Boston suburb, and I was thriving as a marketing director at a prestigious firm. My younger sister Jessica lived nearby, and we had always been close, at least I thought we were. Our parents doted on both of us, though Jessica had always been their favorite, the baby of the family who could do no wrong. The first hint that something was off came during a casual Sunday brunch at my parents' house. I noticed the lingering glances between Michael and Jessica, the way their hands brushed when passing the salt. I dismissed it initially. She was my sister, and he was my husband. Surely I was being paranoid. But the seed of doubt had been planted. 2 weeks later, I borrowed Michael's laptop to finish a presentation when a message notification popped up. I miss you already. Last night was amazing. It was from Jessica. My hands trembled as I clicked on the message thread, revealing months of conversations, intimate photos, and plans for their secret rendezvous. I felt the ground shift beneath me. The sister I had protected and supported throughout her life, and the man who had vowed to love me until death were betraying me in the most intimate way possible. I rushed to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left but the bitter taste of betrayal. That night, I lay awake beside Michael, studying his sleeping face, the face I had once loved unconditionally. I considered confronting them both immediately, screaming, throwing things, filing for divorce. But something inside me, a cold, calculating voice I had never heard before, whispered that there was a better way. Instead of revealing what I knew, I began documenting everything. I took screenshots of their messages, recorded their phone calls when possible, and even hired a private investigator to photograph their meetings, all while pretending everything was normal. I smiled through family dinners, kissed Michael goodbye each morning, and maintained my close relationship with Jessica, who continued to share sister secrets with me, everything except the most significant betrayal of all. What hurt the most wasn't just the affair, it was the realization that they must have been laughing at me behind my back. Jessica would call me for advice about her mystery man while sleeping with my husband. Michael would come home late from work meetings with the scent of her perfume still clinging to his clothes. I also discovered something disturbing about Michael's finances. As the CFO of a regional construction company, he had access to company funds, and I found evidence that he had been siphoning money into a separate account, likely planning his escape with my sister. This wasn't just a betrayal of the heart, it was a calculated plan to dismantle the life we had built together. During this time, I reconnected with an old law school friend, Nathan, who had become a successful attorney specializing in divorce and corporate fraud. Over coffee, I carefully laid out my situation without revealing names. His advice was invaluable, not just for the legal strategy, but for helping me maintain my sanity through the darkest period of my life. Document everything, Victoria. And remember, the best revenge isn't just about hurting them back. It's about reclaiming your power and ensuring they face the consequences of their actions. Those words became my mantra as I meticulously constructed my plan. I wasn't just going to expose their affair. I was going to dismantle the foundation of their betrayal brick by brick. Jessica had always relied on our parents' financial support and approval. Michael's career was built on his reputation for integrity. These would be the pressure points of my revenge. As I gathered evidence and formulated my strategy, I also worked on myself. I joined a gym, started therapy under the guise of work stress, and quietly consulted with financial advisors to protect my assets. I needed to be stronger, clearer, and more strategic than I had ever been. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about justice. As weeks turned into months, I became an unwilling expert in deception. I learned to smile through gritted teeth at family gatherings where Jessica would sit just a little too close to Michael. I perfected the art of appearing oblivious when they exchanged glances across the dinner table. I even endured Jessica's dramatic stories about her mysterious new boyfriend, who she couldn't introduce to the family yet because the timing wasn't right. If only they knew how transparent their lies had become to me. During this time, I discovered more layers to their betrayal. Through my careful monitoring of Michael's emails, I found that he had been planning to leave me for months. He had consulted with a divorce attorney known for aggressive tactics against high-earning wives. He had researched states with favorable alimony laws. He had even started transferring small amounts of our joint savings into a private account, death by 1,000 financial cuts. Jessica, meanwhile, had been laying groundwork of her own. She had told our parents that Michael and I were having problems and that I had changed over the past year. She painted herself as the supportive sister, while subtly suggesting that my work focus had driven a wedge in my marriage. The narrative was clear. When their affair eventually came to light, I would be partially to blame. What they didn't realize was that I had allies of my own. Nathan had introduced me to Eliza, a forensic accountant who specialized in hidden assets. She meticulously traced Michael's financial maneuvers and discovered that the company embezzlement went deeper than I had initially thought. He wasn't just stealing to fund a new life with Jessica, he had been manipulating company accounts for years. He's been cooking the books for at least 3 years, Eliza explained during one of our discreet meetings at a cafe far from my usual haunts. The amount is close to $750,000. His partners would have a very strong case against him. This information was the missing piece I needed. Michael's partners, James and Robert, were straight-arrow businessmen with military backgrounds and zero tolerance for dishonesty. They had built their construction company on their sterling reputations in Boston's competitive market. I also learned more about Jessica's life through subtle conversations with mutual friends. My sister, always eager to present herself as successful and independent, had been struggling financially for years. Her boutique clothing store was failing, and she had accumulated significant debt. Michael, with his access to company money, must have seemed like the perfect escape route. The most painful discovery came when I found a journal Jessica had accidentally left at my house after a sisterly movie night, a night when she had deliberately spilled wine on my carpet so she could text Michael about the hilarious mess while I was cleaning up. The journal contained entries detailing not just their physical affair, but their emotional one. They had been meeting for over a year, starting as innocent coffee dates that evolved into something that made me physically ill to read about. "V is so clueless," she had written. "Sometimes I feel guilty, but then I remember how everything has always come so easily to her. Maybe it's my turn to have something beautiful." The words burned into my mind. I had spent my life supporting Jessica, from helping her with college applications to investing in her struggling boutique. I had never considered myself the fortunate sister. I had worked hard for everything I had achieved. But in her narrative, I was the privileged one who deserved to lose it all. During this period, I maintained my professional success, even securing a major promotion at work. Every congratulatory message from Michael felt like acid on my skin. Every enthusiastic hug from Jessica was an exercise in self-control. I channeled my pain into performance, knowing financial independence would be crucial in the aftermath of what I was planning. I also began subtly shifting our marital assets. Nothing illegal, I was careful about that, but I moved what I legally could to protect myself. I sold jewelry Michael had given me and deposited the money in a new account. I used my bonus to pay down the mortgage rather than adding it to our joint savings where he could access it. All the while, I waited for the perfect moment to unveil everything. That moment came when my parents announced they would be celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary with a family dinner at their favorite restaurant. They wanted to gather their small family, just the four of us plus Michael, to commemorate their enduring love. The irony was almost too perfect. A celebration of marital fidelity would become the stage for exposing the ultimate betrayal. The night before the dinner, I carefully compiled all my evidence into organized files, one for my parents, one for Michael's business partners, and one for our family lawyer. I wore my grandmother's diamond earrings, a family heirloom that was supposed to pass to the first daughter to give my parents a grandchild. Jessica had always coveted them, and I caught her staring at them as I finalized my preparations. "Those look beautiful on you, Vic," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But maybe I should be the one wearing them soon. You never know what the future holds." If only she knew how right she was about the uncertain future, just not in the way she imagined. The day of my parents' anniversary dinner arrived with picture-perfect New England autumn weather, crisp air, golden sunlight, and leaves in brilliant shades of red and orange. It seemed almost cruel that such a beautiful day would mark the implosion of our family, but perhaps there was poetry in it too. Endings and beginnings, death and renewal, the eternal cycle playing out in our personal drama. I spent the morning finalizing my preparations. First, I visited my attorney's office to sign the divorce papers I had quietly prepared. They would remain unfiled until after the dinner, but having them signed gave me a sense of control. Next, I delivered a sealed envelope to the office of Michael's business partners with instructions that it should be opened the following morning. Then I visited my bank to ensure my new accounts were in order and inaccessible to Michael. The final touch was a meeting with a reporter from the Boston Globe who had been investigating corporate fraud cases. I didn't provide specific details yet, just enough to pique interest and secure a promise that she would be available on short notice the next day. As I dressed for dinner, I chose my outfit carefully, a crimson dress that projected confidence and commanded attention. Michael noticed immediately. "Wow, you look intense," he said, adjusting his tie nervously. "It's just a family dinner, you know." "It's a special occasion," I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I want to make an impression." During the drive to the restaurant, Michael received 3 texts from Jessica. I pretended not to notice how he angled the phone away from me or the slight smile that played on his lips as he responded. They were finalizing details for their announcement, unaware that I had orchestrated every element of the evening ahead. The restaurant was one of Boston's finest, old-world elegance, with crisp white tablecloths and discreet, attentive service. My parents were already seated when we arrived, my father dignified in his best suit, my mother radiant in the blue dress I had helped her choose. They stood to embrace us, their faces bright with the simple joy of family togetherness. Jessica arrived last, as usual. She had always believed in making an entrance. She wore an empire waist dress that skillfully concealed her still flat stomach while hinting at the news she planned to share. The hostess led her to our table, and I watched as her eyes locked with Michael's for a fraction too long. My mother noticed nothing, busy ordering champagne for a toast. My father, more perceptive, furrowed his brow slightly at the interaction, but said nothing. They had never wanted to see flaws in their younger daughter. As appetizers were served, my parents reminisced about their 35 years together, the struggles of their early marriage, the joy of raising children, the comfort of growing old with your best friend. Each word was a dagger, highlighting the mockery that Michael and Jessica had made of marriage vows and family bonds. "What's your secret?" I asked my parents, champagne glass in hand. "How have you maintained such loyalty all these years?" "No real secret," my father said. "Just mutual respect and honesty. Without those, you have nothing." Jessica shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Michael suddenly became very interested in his appetizer. The main course arrived, and the conversation shifted to casual family updates. I spoke enthusiastically about my recent promotion, watching as Jessica's eyes narrowed with the familiar jealousy that had characterized our relationship since childhood. Actually, she interrupted, setting down her water glass with deliberate care, I have some news too. This was it, the moment they had planned and the opportunity one had anticipated. I took a slow sip of water, preparing myself for the performance of a lifetime. I'm pregnant, Jessica announced, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. Her eyes darted to Michael, then quickly away. My mother gasped with delight. My father beamed with pride. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Who's the lucky father? Is it that mystery man you've been seeing? Jessica took a deep breath, reaching for Michael's hand across the table. It's complicated. Michael and we've fallen in love. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents' expressions transformed from joy to confusion to horror in the span of seconds. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father turned to stone. Victoria, I'm so sorry, Michael began, his practiced speech dripping with false remorse. We never meant for this to happen. These feelings just developed. We didn't want to hurt you, but with the baby coming. Jessica nodded earnestly. We wanted to wait to tell everyone, but with the pregnancy, we thought it was best to be honest now. Honest? I repeated, my voice surprisingly steady. That's an interesting choice of word. All eyes turned to me, expecting tears, hysteria, or stunned silence. Instead, I smiled, reached for my purse, and pulled out a small stack of papers. Since we're all being honest tonight, I said, I have an announcement too. The restaurant's ambient noise seemed to fade away as all attention fixed on me. Jessica's triumphant expression began to falter. Michael's rehearsed look of contrition transformed into wariness. My parents sat frozen, caught in the crossfire of their daughter's shattered relationship. I've known about your affair for 6 months, I said, my voice calm and measured. Every text, every hotel meeting, every lie you told to cover your tracks. I know all of it. Jessica's face drained of color. Michael's hand, still clasping hers on the table, twitched nervously. Victoria, my mother began, her voice trembling, perhaps we should discuss this privately. No, Mom, I interrupted gently. I think we've had enough privacy and secrets in this family. Tonight is about honesty, remember. I turned to Jessica, maintaining the composed demeanor I had practiced for weeks. You mentioned being pregnant. Congratulations. But I'm curious, did you tell Michael about your appointment with Dr. Sanderson last year? The one where you were told you might have difficulty conceiving without medical intervention. Jessica's eyes widened in shock. This was a secret she had shared with me during a vulnerable moment, long before her betrayal began. And Michael, I continued, turning to my husband, did you tell Jessica about your vasectomy 3 years ago? The one you got after we decided we didn't want children. The bomb I had dropped detonated in slow motion. Michael had indeed had a vasectomy, a mutual decision we had made after much discussion. Jessica's expression transformed from shock to confusion to horrified realization. You're lying, she whispered, but the uncertainty in her voice betrayed her. Am I? I removed another document from my folder, Michael's medical records, which I had legal access to as his spouse. Would you like to see the paperwork? Michael's face had turned ashen. Victoria, this is embarrassing? Inconvenient? The truth, I suggested. If you're actually pregnant, Jessica, and I have my doubts, then I think congratulations are in order for you and whoever the real father is. It certainly isn't my husband. My father, who had been silently watching this unfold, finally spoke. Jessica, is this true? Have you been lying about the pregnancy? Jessica's composure crumbled entirely. Tears streaked her makeup as she looked desperately at Michael, who had physically recoiled from her. The perfectly orchestrated sympathy they had expected was evaporating before their eyes. I thought, she stammered, unable to complete her thought. You thought what? I prompted. That Michael had somehow reversed a procedure he never told you about? Or were you planning to conveniently lose this fictional baby after you secured his commitment? The harsh truth hung in the air. My mother stifled a sob, while my father's face had hardened into an expression I had rarely seen, profound disappointment. But this is just the beginning, I continued, pulling out more papers from my folder. Michael, would you like to explain to everyone how you've been embezzling from your company for the past 3 years? Or shall I share the documentation with your business partners in the morning as planned? Michael's face contorted with panic. You can't prove anything, he hissed, but his eyes darted to the folder in my hands. Actually, I can. Forensic accountants are remarkably thorough. Your partners James and Robert were very interested when I called them yesterday. They're expecting a full report tomorrow. I turned back to my sister. And Jessica, I've taken the liberty of reviewing the financial records of your boutique, the business that our parents helped you start and that I invested in. Interesting how much inventory seems to disappear without record. The IRS tends to find that sort of discrepancy fascinating. The trap I had laid was springing closed from all directions. What they had planned as my public humiliation had transformed into their own exposure. Why are you doing this? Jessica cried, mascara streaming down her cheeks. We're family. Exactly, I replied, my composure finally cracking slightly. We're family. You were my sister. He was my husband. And both of you betrayed that in the most fundamental way possible. My father reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. In his eyes, I saw understanding and a grief that mirrored my own. My mother sat rigidly in her chair, her anniversary celebration in ruins. I filed for divorce this morning, I informed Michael. Given the evidence of financial fraud, your attorney might advise you that contesting it would not be in your best interest. Michael, always strategic, was already calculating his options. I could see it in his eyes, the realization that fighting me would only worsen his legal position with his business partners. As for you, Jessica, I continued, I've withdrawn my investment from your boutique, effective immediately. I've also informed our extended family about what you've done, yes, including Grandma Eleanor. She was particularly disappointed. This final blow struck Jessica hardest. Our grandmother had always been her biggest champion and financial safety net. The loss of her approval would devastate Jessica far more than any legal consequence. The waiter approached our table, sensing the tension but professionally offering dessert menus. I declined with a polite smile and requested the check. I'll be covering dinner tonight, I announced. Consider it my gift for your anniversary, Mom and Dad. I'm sorry it came with such unexpected revelations. As I settled the bill, an uncomfortable silence blanketed our table. The perfect family portrait had been shattered, revealing the ugly truth beneath the surface. Michael stared at his water glass, calculating his next move. Jessica sat trembling, mascara-stained tears continuing to fall. My parents held hands tightly, anchoring each other in the storm of family destruction. Before we leave this dramatic moment hanging, I want to ask you, have you ever discovered a betrayal that changed how you saw someone forever? This turning point in my story is just the beginning of the consequences. If you're finding this family drama intense, hit that like button and subscribe to see how justice continues to unfold. The next part reveals how quickly a house of cards can collapse when built on lies. The days following the anniversary dinner unfolded with the precision of a well-orchestrated symphony of consequences. By 9 a.m. the next morning, Michael's business partners had opened my envelope containing detailed evidence of his financial misconduct. By noon, he had been locked out of the company's systems and offices. By 3 p.m., his corporate attorney had called mine, desperately seeking a deal. I didn't answer Michael's increasingly frantic calls and texts. They ranged from threats, "You'll regret this vindictive stunt," to bargaining, "We can work this out privately," to pathetic pleas, "Please, Victoria, my whole life is falling apart." Each message confirmed what I already knew. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done, only that he was facing consequences. Jessica's unraveling was even more spectacular. After fleeing the restaurant in tears, she had apparently spent the night calling mutual friends, spinning a version of events that cast her as the victim of my mental breakdown and vicious lies. By morning, I had emailed each of those friends the screenshots and evidence of her betrayal. By afternoon, her social media accounts had gone silent as the support she expected failed to materialize. My parents, shell-shocked by the implosion of their family, retreated to process their grief. My mother called daily, her voice heavy with the weight of what had happened. "We should have seen it," she said during one tearful conversation. "The way Jessica always wanted what you had, the way she'd never take responsibility, we failed both of you by not addressing it sooner." "You didn't fail me, Mom," I assured her, finding forgiveness easier than I had expected. Adults make their own choices. Jessica and Michael made theirs. My father, a man of few words, expressed his support differently. He arrived at my house 3 days after the dinner with boxes of my childhood belongings he had kept in their attic. "Thought you might want these now," he said gruffly. "To remember who you were before all this." Among the items was a framed photo of Jessica and me as children, arms wrapped around each other on a beach. I didn't display it, but I couldn't bring myself to throw it away either. It went into a closet, like the relationship itself, not destroyed, but indefinitely stored away. The professional consequences for Michael mounted quickly. His partners, both military veterans with strong ethical codes, filed criminal charges related to the embezzlement. The reporter I had contacted published a detailed exposé of the financial fraud, carefully framed to protect the company's reputation while laying the blame squarely on Michael. His carefully cultivated image as a respectable businessman disintegrated overnight. Jessica's boutique, already struggling, couldn't survive the withdrawal of my investment and the subtle community ostracism that followed the scandal. Within 3 weeks, she had announced a temporary closure for rebranding that everyone recognized as permanent. Throughout this period, I maintained my professional composure at work. My colleagues, aware through the inevitable grapevine that I was going through a divorce, respected my privacy. My boss, impressed by my continued performance under pressure, accelerated my consideration for the next level of leadership. Nathan, my attorney friend who had become a crucial ally, checked in regularly with both legal updates and personal support. "How are you really doing?" he asked during one of our meetings after delivering news that Michael had agreed to an uncontested divorce to avoid further scrutiny of his finances. I paused, realizing I hadn't honestly answered that question for anyone, including myself. "I'm reclaiming pieces of myself. Some days are harder than others." "That's more honest than most people manage after something like this," he observed. What surprised me most during this period was discovering who my true friends were. People I had considered mere acquaintances showed up with comfort food and offers of practical help. Conversely, some I had thought close friends disappeared, uncomfortable with the messy reality of betrayal or secretly judging my methodical response to it. 6 weeks after the dinner, I received an unexpected visit from Jessica. She looked diminished somehow, her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater, her typically perfect makeup absent. She stood on my porch, arms wrapped protectively around herself. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual confidence. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let her in. We sat in the living room, the silence between us dense with unspoken history. "I lost the boutique," she finally said. "And Mom and Dad are barely speaking to me. I'm staying with Cousin Rachel until I figure things out." "That's not why you're here," I responded, seeing through the attempt at sympathy. She looked up, tears forming. "No, it's not. I came to tell you, there never was a pregnancy. You were right. I thought if I could just get Michael to commit publicly, everything would fall into place." "And did you think about what would happen after? Were you planning to fake a miscarriage?" She flinched at my directness. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Everything was happening so fast. "That's always been your problem, Jessica. You want what others have without understanding the work behind it or considering the consequences." "I know," she whispered. "I've started therapy. The therapist says I have issues with comparison and entitlement. She's helping me understand why I've always felt like I was in your shadow." I didn't respond immediately, processing the surreal nature of this conversation. My sister, who had tried to steal my husband and life, was now seeking what? Forgiveness? Understanding? What do you want from me, Jessica? I finally asked. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe just to tell you that I know what I did was unforgivable. And that I'm sorry, not just for getting caught, but for being the kind of person who could do that to her sister. I studied her face, searching for the manipulation I had become accustomed to detecting. Instead, I saw something unfamiliar, genuine regret, perhaps the first real emotion she had shown me in years. I appreciate you saying that, I said carefully. But reconciliation isn't something I can offer right now, maybe not ever. She nodded, wiping away tears. I understand. I just wanted you to know. After she left, I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by the home I had once shared with Michael. In the quiet aftermath of Jessica's visit, I made a decision. This house, filled with memories of betrayal, would never feel like mine again. It was time to sell it and find a new beginning. The next morning, I contacted a realtor and began the process of listing the property. As we walked through the house discussing improvements to maximize the sale price, I felt a weight lifting. Each room we evaluated represented a step toward my future rather than a reminder of my past. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Michael's former business partner, James. Victoria, I hope I'm not overstepping, he began, but I wanted to let you know that Michael has agreed to a plea deal. He'll be serving time, not as much as he deserves, but the legal system works on negotiation. Thank you for telling me, I replied, surprised by how little satisfaction the news brought. There's something else, James continued. Given your background in marketing and your obvious integrity, Robert and I were wondering if you'd consider joining our leadership team. We're rebuilding after this mess, and we need someone we can trust. The offer was unexpected but not unwelcome. It represented a significant step up professionally and a chance to help repair a company damaged by Michael's actions. I'd be interested in discussing it, I told him, recognizing the opportunity as another building block in my new life. As autumn deepened into winter, the pieces of my reconfigured existence began to take shape. The divorce was finalized with terms heavily in my favor. The house sold quickly in Boston's competitive market. I accepted the position with James and Robert's company, negotiating a compensation package that reflected my value. I also found a new home, a modern apartment overlooking the harbor, as different as possible from the suburban house I had shared with Michael. Its clean lines and open spaces reflected the clarity I was cultivating in my life. Throughout this period of transition, I maintained minimal contact with my family. My parents, still processing their own grief over Jessica's actions, respected my need for space while making it clear their door remained open. Jessica, true to her word about therapy, sent occasional texts with no expectation of response, updates on her progress, or simply acknowledgments of holidays. Michael, facing prison time and financial ruin, made one final attempt at contact. He appeared at my office one afternoon, somehow charming his way past the receptionist. Victoria, he said when I looked up to find him standing in my doorway. You've done well for yourself. His tone suggested this success somehow validated his betrayal. What do you want, Michael? I asked, my finger hovering over the security button on my phone. I just wanted to see you before I go away. To tell you that I know I made a mistake. A mistake? I repeated. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or buying the wrong gift. What you did was a choice, a series of calculated choices over months. He had the grace to look ashamed, though I doubted the sincerity. You're right. And I'm paying for those choices now. Yes, you are, I agreed. And that payment isn't to me, it's to justice. There's a difference. As security arrived to escort him out, I felt no triumph, no vindication, only a quiet certainty that this chapter of my life was finally closing. 1 year after the anniversary dinner that had changed everything, I stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows watching snow blanket Boston Harbor. My new life had taken shape with a deliberateness that reflected the lessons I had learned about trust, boundaries, and resilience. Professionally, I had exceeded even my own expectations. The leadership position at James and Robert's company had been challenging but rewarding. I had helped them rebuild their brand after the scandal, implementing transparency measures that restored client confidence. My office wall now displayed an award from the Boston Business Association for excellence in corporate rehabilitation, an ironic recognition given that I had been part of exposing the fraud in the first place. My personal reconstruction had been more complex. The betrayal had fundamentally altered how I approached relationships. Trust, once given freely, now came with careful consideration. Yet I had been determined not to let Michael and Jessica's actions harden me completely. This resolution was tested when Nathan, my attorney friend, asked me to dinner, not as your lawyer. Our relationship had evolved gradually from professional to friendly to something with potential for more. Over a candlelit meal at a small Italian restaurant, I found myself laughing genuinely for what felt like the first time in years. "It's good to see you happy," he observed, his eyes warm with appreciation. "I'm working on it," I admitted. "Some days are easier than others." Nathan nodded, understanding the journey I had been on. Unlike others who wanted me to move on or find closure, he recognized that healing wasn't linear. "No rush," he said simply. "Good things take time." That dinner led to others, and slowly I allowed myself to explore the possibility of trusting someone again. Nathan never pushed, never rushed, respecting the careful pace I needed to set. My relationship with my parents had also begun to heal. The holidays had been difficult, our first as a fractured family, but we had navigated them with honest conversations and a shared commitment to moving forward. My mother had stopped trying to broker peace between Jessica and me, finally accepting that some bridges couldn't be rebuilt. "I raised you both to be strong women," she told me during a quiet moment on Christmas Eve. "I never imagined that strength would be needed against each other." "Life rarely follows our imagined scripts," I replied, thinking of how thoroughly my own had been rewritten. Jessica remained on the periphery of my life, present enough that I knew she was continuing therapy and had found a job at a friend's catering company, but distant enough that we didn't have to attempt awkward reconciliation. On my birthday, she sent a simple card with no manipulative overtures, just an acknowledgement of the day and a brief "thinking of you." It was perhaps the most honest communication we had shared in years. Michael's consequences had played out as expected. He was serving a 3-year sentence at a minimum security facility, his reputation and career destroyed. I had removed all reminders of him from my life, down to replacing the furniture we had chosen together. The wedding album and gifts had been donated, sold, or discarded in a cathartic weekend of elimination. What surprised me most during this year of reconstruction was discovering strengths I hadn't known I possessed. The woman who had methodically documented betrayal, strategically planned consequences, and calmly rebuilt her life was someone I was still getting to know, someone I had become through necessity, but was choosing to remain through conviction. This evolution was reflected in unexpected ways. I started taking self-defense classes, finding satisfaction in the physical discipline and growing confidence. I joined a support group for survivors of betrayal trauma, where I both received and offered insights. I even began mentoring young women at a local community college, sharing lessons about financial independence and professional boundaries. My new apartment became a symbol of this transformation. Unlike the home I had shared with Michael, which had been filled with compromises in taste and function, this space was entirely mine. Modern art that he would have dismissed as pretentious hung on walls painted in colors he would have vetoed. The kitchen, once his domain for showing off culinary skills to impressed guests, was now my space for experimenting with recipes that pleased only me. On the anniversary of the fateful dinner, I decided against dwelling in memories. Instead, I invited a small group of true friends. People who had demonstrated their loyalty during the past difficult year for a forward-facing celebration. We drank champagne, shared stories of overcoming obstacles, and toasted to resilience. To the hardest year that taught us the most important lessons, Nathan proposed, raising his glass. And to authentic relationships built on trust, added Eliza, who had become a close friend beyond her professional role. As we celebrated, I realized how much my definition of family had evolved. These people, connected not by blood but by genuine care and respect, had become my chosen family. The betrayal that had shattered my biological connections had paradoxically led me to forge stronger, healthier bonds elsewhere. That night, after my guests had left, I opened my laptop and began writing. The therapeutic journal I had started during therapy had evolved into something more structured, a memoir of betrayal, consequences, and rebuilding. My therapist had suggested that sharing my story might help others navigating similar devastation. As I wrote about the anniversary dinner, capturing the shock on Jessica's face when her deception was exposed and Michael's panic when his crimes were revealed, I felt no vindictive pleasure. Instead, I recognized it as the necessary catalyst that had freed me from relationships built on false foundations. The final pages of that night's writing focused not on the betrayal, but on the aftermath, the painful but ultimately liberating process of reclaiming my life. I ended with the reflection that sometimes the most devastating losses clear space for more authentic gains. The sister and husband who had conspired to destroy me had instead triggered my transformation into someone stronger, wiser, and more genuinely myself. As spring arrived in Boston, bringing renewal to the city, I received news that Michael had been denied early release. His attempts to manipulate the system had been recognized for what they were, further evidence of his fundamental dishonesty. Jessica, meanwhile, had moved to Portland to start fresh, a distance that benefited us both. My parents had begun their own healing journey, with my father acknowledging the role their parenting had played in Jessica's sense of entitlement, and my mother working to balance her maternal love with clear-eyed recognition of her younger daughter's choices. Our family would never return to what it had been, but we were finding a new equilibrium based on honesty rather than illusion. As I approached the second year of my reconstructed life, I reflected on the lessons of the past and the possibilities of the future. The betrayal had nearly broken me, but in rebuilding, I had created something stronger and truer than what had existed before. That wasn't just survival, it was triumph. 2.5 years after Jessica announced her fake pregnancy with my husband's child, I stood in the green room of a Boston television studio, preparing for an interview about my recently published memoir, Blood Ties and Betrayal: Rebuilding After Family Deception. The book had struck a chord with readers navigating their own experiences of betrayal, becoming an unexpected bestseller and launching a new chapter in my life as an author and speaker. My publicist reviewed final details as the makeup artist made touch-ups. Through the monitor, I could see the host introducing the segment about a local author whose stunning family drama and subsequent journey of recovery has captivated readers nationwide. 3 minutes, called the production assistant, and I took a deep breath, centering myself for the public discussion of what had once been my most private pain. As I waited, my phone buzzed with a text from Nathan, now my partner of over a year. "You've got this. Your story is helping people. Proud of you." His steady support had been instrumental in my decision to share my experience publicly. The interview itself flowed more easily than I had anticipated, the host respectful but thorough in her questions about the betrayal, the calculated revenge, and the healing process I had documented. "What surprised you most in the aftermath of exposing your sister and husband?" she asked toward the end of our segment. "That justice wasn't the end of the journey, it was just the beginning," I replied. "The real work wasn't in the exposure of their betrayal, but in rebuilding myself afterward. And perhaps most surprisingly, discovering that forgiveness wasn't necessary for my healing." "You haven't forgiven them?" the host asked, clearly expecting a more conventional narrative of reconciliation. "I've released the anger and resentment because those emotions only hurt me. But forgiveness implies restoring trust, and some breaches can't and shouldn't be repaired. I've accepted what happened without excusing it." That's been more honest and healthier for me than forced forgiveness. After the interview, as I gathered my belongings in the green room, the receptionist appeared with an envelope. "This was left for you at the front desk," she explained. Inside was a note in familiar handwriting, Jessica's, along with a check for a substantial amount. "I watched your interview from Portland," the note read. "You're right about forgiveness. Some things can't be undone. This is the money I took from your investment in the boutique plus interest. It can't repair what I broke, but maybe it can fund something new and good in your life. I'm proud of who you've become, even though I played the villain in your story. Take care, Jay." The gesture was unexpected but fitting, a practical amends rather than an emotional plea. I folded the note and deposited the check the next day into a foundation I had established to help women rebuild their lives after betrayal. A week later, I received another surprise communication, an email from Michael's former cellmate informing me that Michael had completed a restorative justice program in prison. As part of his process, he had written letters of apology to those he had harmed, including me. The email asked if I would be willing to receive such a letter. After consideration, I agreed. The letter, when it arrived, was neither manipulative nor self-serving as I had feared. Instead, it contained a straightforward acknowledgement of the harm he had caused and the consequences he had faced. "I won't ask for your forgiveness," he wrote toward the end, "as I haven't earned it and may never be able to. I simply wanted you to know that I understand now what I couldn't or wouldn't see then, that my actions reflected profound failures of character that hurt someone who deserved better. You were right to expose me, and the consequences have been just." I didn't respond to the letter, but I didn't destroy it either. Like Jessica's note, it represented a closing of accounts rather than a reopening of wounds. That summer, I used part of my book advance to take my parents on a Mediterranean cruise, a belated celebration of their anniversary and an opportunity to strengthen our healing relationship. As we sat on the deck watching a sunset over Santorini, my father broached the subject we had largely avoided. "Have you heard from Jessica recently?" he asked carefully. "She sent a note after my TV interview," I replied, "with repayment for the boutique investment." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "She's trying in her way." "Yes," I acknowledged. "In her way. And is there any chance?" my father began, then stopped himself. "I'm sorry. That's not fair to ask." "It's okay, Dad," I assured him. "I know you wish things could be different. I did too, for a long time. But I've made peace with how things are. Jessica and I will never be close again, but we're not enemies either. We're just separate chapters in each other's lives now." My mother squeezed my hand, acceptance replacing the hope for reconciliation she had long harbored. As our trip continued, I found myself reflecting on the concept of justice versus revenge. What I had orchestrated at that anniversary dinner had elements of both, exposing truths while ensuring consequences. The methodical way I had prepared had been about justice, but the public nature of the revelation had contained an undeniable element of revenge. Yet the most meaningful consequences hadn't been the ones I had engineered. Michael's imprisonment and Jessica's financial collapse had been satisfying in the moment, but ultimately hollow. The real justice had come through the natural outcomes of their choices. The loss of trust, reputation, and relationship that no court could impose or restore. And for me, the most significant result hadn't been their suffering but my growth. The betrayal had forced me to examine everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and my own capacity for resilience. The woman who had emerged from that crucible was more authentic, more discerning, and paradoxically more open to genuine connection despite, or perhaps because of, having experienced its counterfeit. My memoir ended with this realization, and it was the message I emphasized in my speaking engagements to those navigating their own experiences of betrayal. That surviving deception isn't just about exposing the truth or securing consequences for the perpetrators. It's about reclaiming your own narrative and recognizing that being betrayed doesn't define you, how you respond to it does. 6 months after the publication of my book, I received an invitation that brought this journey full circle. My parents were planning a small vow renewal ceremony for their upcoming anniversary, a reclaiming of the celebration that had been overshadowed by revelation and drama years before. The invitation included a handwritten note. "We've all learned difficult lessons about family. We'd like to celebrate what remains and what has been rebuilt." I accepted, of course. And when they asked if Nathan could join me, I recognized it for what it was, their blessing of this new relationship built on the honest foundation my marriage had lacked. The ceremony was intimate and genuine, held in their backyard with only a handful of guests. Jessica was not present, a decision that represented not ongoing animosity, but a recognition of necessary boundaries. My mother wore blue, as she had on that fateful night, but this time her eyes were clear and knowing rather than innocent and trusting. As my parents exchanged vows that now carried the weight of tested commitment rather than untried promises, I stood beside Nathan, his hand warm in mine. The journey from betrayal to this moment of authentic celebration had been neither straight nor simple, but it had led to a place of hard-won wisdom and genuine peace. That evening, as the small gathering enjoyed dinner under string lights in the garden, I slipped away briefly to stand alone at the edge of the property. The summer stars spread across the sky, indifferent to the human dramas played out beneath them. In their vastness, I found perspective on my own story, significant to those who lived it, but just one of countless tales of betrayal, justice, and rebuilding woven through human experience. I thought of the thousands of readers who had connected with my book, sharing their own stories of deception and recovery. We were all participants in this ancient cycle of trust broken and rebuilt, each finding our way through the aftermath as best we could. Nathan found me there, respecting my solitude with a questioning glance. "Just taking a moment," I explained. "Thinking about how far we've all come." "Regrets?" he asked quietly. I considered the question carefully. "Not about exposing the truth," I finally answered. "That was necessary. Perhaps about the way I did it, the public nature of it." But then again, their betrayal was built on the assumption that I would be too ashamed or shocked to respond publicly. Breaking that expectation was part of reclaiming my power. He nodded, understanding as he always did the complexity of emotions surrounding my choices. "Your parents seem at peace," he observed. "They've done their own healing," I agreed. "We all have, in different ways." As we rejoined the celebration, my father proposed a toast, not to the past or even to the future, but to resilience. "To weathering storms we didn't see coming," he said, his voice steady, "and building stronger shelters afterward." We raised our glasses in agreement, this small gathering of people who had witnessed both the destruction and reconstruction of what family meant to us. Later that night, as Nathan and I drove home under the same stars I had contemplated earlier, he asked a question that caught me by surprise. "Do you ever think about having a family of your own someday?" The question would have terrified me a year earlier, triggering memories of betrayal and loss. But now, it simply felt like one possibility among many in a life rebuilt on authentic foundations. "I think about building connections based on choice rather than obligation," I replied. "Whether that looks like traditional family or something else entirely, I'm open to it evolving naturally." He smiled, squeezing my hand as he kept his eyes on the road. "That's what I love about you, Victoria. You don't follow scripts anymore, you write your own." And that, perhaps, was the most unexpected resolution of all, not just surviving betrayal, but using it as a catalyst to create a life more genuine than the one that had been shattered. The painful revelation at that anniversary dinner hadn't been an ending after all, but the beginning of a more authentic story. I hope my story resonates with those of you who have faced betrayal or are supporting someone through that difficult journey. Have you ever experienced a moment where karma or justice finally caught up with someone who wronged you? How did it make you feel? Was it as satisfying as you imagined, or did you find, like me, that the real victory was in rebuilding yourself? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you or you know someone who might benefit from hearing it, Please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel for more real-life stories about overcoming family drama and betrayal. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that surviving betrayal is possible, and that what comes after can be even better than what was lost. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.